basically, parents, you get all that paperwork before school starts. So now there's a whole single piece of paper that parents have to sign saying that they, understand that it is the law that they need to safely store any guns in their home. I started a petition and I got 2,500 moms to sign it very easily, by the way. People were very excited to sign it. Delivered it at a school board meeting and the resolution passed. So now Los Angeles USD sends home safe storage information to every child in the district, every family in the district. And I don't know what the count is, but I would say now probably hundreds of school districts in America are sending home information about safe storage.
Hello, and welcome to Power to the Parents, a podcast from ParentsTogether. I'm your host, Ailen Arreaza, and I'm also the executive director at ParentsTogether. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by Jessica Stamen. She is a powerhouse activist. She's a mom. She's done some incredible work on lots of issues that matter to kids and families. Welcome to the program, Jessica.
I'm so honored to be here. I'm just thrilled to be here. So thank you so much.
We are so excited to have you. I know that you've had a long journey doing activism on issues that matter to families. And I wanted you to start off by telling us a little bit about what got you into doing activism as a mom.
Sure. So I was a film producer for many years, and I was lucky to be able to work on some films that had, thematic content, topical films. So that I got to dip my toe in using stories to talk about issues. But what really made me become an activist was my oldest was about a year old, maybe 2 years. And I was, I guess, a year old, and I was nursing the baby. And I was scrolling through Facebook, as I always do when I'm nursing. And it came up on my feed, the Sandy Hook tragedy came up on my feed. There I was, like, with new life in my arms, seeing what had happened to those precious kids. And I was like, I'm not alone in this. I know for so many people, and especially parents, this was a galvanizing moment. But I was like, not on my watch. This can't happen. This cannot happen to our kids. And so I was like, I want to do something. I didn't know what to do. But a few months later, a friend of mine actually said that she was starting up a local Moms Demand Action chapter. And at that point, I had actually left the film business to become an educator. And so she asked me, Moms Demand Action, as well as fighting for sensible gun legislation, also has an education arm that's really focused on gun storage, gun safety. So she said, I know you have an education degree, you've been a teacher. Would you be interested in leading up our education arm for our local chapter? So I signed up and I started getting to do like gun safety presentations, in my area. And I also got to work, in general with moms. And at this point, soon enough, elections started coming up. And so I started canvassing and calling and postcarding with Moms Demand Action. And so that's really how my job as an activist started.
Yeah, that story resonates so much. I think our generation of parents, you're right, Sandy Hook was such a galvanizing moment. And I think we all have this story, this moment of how we remember exactly where we were and what we were doing when that news broke. I remember exactly the restaurant I was in. I was having lunch with a friend. And then I remember having this deep need to run to my kids' daycare. My kids were little. They were in daycare that day. Pick them up early and just hold on to them. That's all I wanted to do. Just like hold on to my kids because it was so, so awful. And, but I think it's so beautiful that it sparked this new career for you and this new way of taking so much pain and so much fear that all of us felt, and turning it into action. So you got involved with Moms Demand Action. Can you share a little bit about what Moms Demand Action is for our audience who might not know them?
So Moms Demand Action, I actually think was started right after Sandy Hook, sort of in response to Sandy Hook. And it was literally a woman named Shannon Watts, was a mom. She has like 6 kids. And she, got some other moms together with her around a, dinner table kitchen table, and she was like, what are we going to do? You know, as moms, we are so invested in this issue, and yet there was not yet a group. There were certainly sensible gun legislation advocacy groups doing amazing work, Brady, Women Against Gun Violence, but Moms Demand Action was really thinking, like, how can we harness our power as parents to fight for the sensible gun legislation that is going to keep all of our kids safe. So Moms Demand was founded by Shannon and grew very quickly and grew in a really beautiful way where there were loads of local chapters, and moms really were empowering each other and were empowered themselves to get involved any way that made sense for them. So, you know, some of them would do marches and some of them would do postcards and some of them would do outreach. And as I said, for me, because at that point I had trained as an educator, the education side made sense. So on the education side, as opposed to the advocacy side, the education side was really about sensible, it was about gun storage, and it was about educating parents, community members about how important gun storage is. You know, we have hundreds of kids every year who are dying because of accidents and because of suicide. And in both of those situations, those are situations where kids got their hands on a gun that they should not have had access to. And at the time when I started, I don't think there were any gun storage. Well, there were some gun storage laws on the books, but there were no laws mandating that parents be educated about storage. So schools weren't sending home information. At that time, even doctors' offices, I don't think, were sending home information. So yes, these laws were on the books in some places, but people didn't know. And so a big focus that I took on when I was at Moms Demand Action was making sure that schools sent information home to parents. When I started at Moms Demand, I think, and I could be wrong, I think there was one city in America that was sending information home to parents about safe storage, which was Stockton, California. And I live in Burbank, California, which is like a suburb of Los Angeles. And I remember I met with our school superintendent and I said, hey, you know, wouldn't this be a great idea to send information home about safe storage? And he laughed at me. And this wasn't a public, he laughed at me. And he's like,
Yeah.
it's never going to work.
So that's so wild that the principal would laugh at you about that. It's you know, it's such a serious problem, and we know that gun violence is the right now it's the number one cause of death in children in our country. But part of me can resonate a little bit with that principle, and I'll tell you why. Because as afraid as I am about gun violence and as much as I want to keep my kids safe, having a conversation with another parent about whether or not they have a gun in their home makes me so nervous. It gives me like a pit in the bottom of my stomach because guns are so polarizing. It's such a tricky thing. I don't want I don't know. I just don't want to open up that can of worms sometimes. And I have done it, but I've had to like psych myself up to ask about it. So
And
have you found that? And what advice do you have for parents and teachers and principals who are going through this?
so this was a big thing. We talked a lot about so Moms Demand Action. We did a presentation called "Be Smart," and it was about, you know, gun storage. And a big thing we talked about was not only do you have to, of course, secure any guns in your own home, right? If you have a gun in the house, that's your right. We always say, you know, that is your right to have a gun in the house. But when you have children in the house, it really needs to be locked up in a safe. And the ammunition has to be stored separately. You know, we heard so many stories about people who would say, you know, my kid couldn't find my gun, it was in the closet, or my kid could never access the gun, it was under the bed, right? And I was thinking about, like, my kids could find a jelly bean in kids, but whatever they're not supposed to find, kids find every time. And so, of course, hiding in a closet or underneath the bed, that is not going to keep it out of kids' hands. So anyway, the first priority was always making sure if you have a gun in your home, making sure it's properly stored, and then absolutely asking people. So I have a couple examples, but you know, a friend of mine said she, after the Be Smart presentation, decided to ask her father-in-law if there was a gun in the home because her daughter would play, you know, in the in-laws' house all the time. And so she was like, hey, do you guys have a gun, you know, in the house? And he goes, oh, don't worry, it's in a coat pocket in the closet. And
Gosh.
like, oh, the closet where my child hides during hide and seek. Yes, that's
Right.
right. But in grandpa's head, it was well hidden. So we definitely encourage people to ask before play dates and to ask family members about guns in the home. And what we always say is like, you ask about other things before a play date, right? Like if your kid has allergies, you'd say, oh, hope you don't serve my kid peanuts, or I hope let me know if you have a dog. My kid is allergic to dogs, or is scared of them. There's so many things in the home that we would ask about before a play date. So it can be couched in that kind of conversation. Another thing we always say is just be transparent about it. Like I say, like, hey, this is really awkward, but I saw this presentation, or I heard that kids, are finding guns. I do have to ask, do you have a gun in the home? And then what we usually recommend is you say, do you have a gun in the home? And if so, can I ask how it's stored? Because you don't want them to feel like you're, the woke police or whatever the phrase is, that you're sort of
Right.
judging them for having a gun in the home. There are many reasons why they might have it. So it's really about like, hey, I just want to know if you have a gun in the home. You can even say like, if so, I understand. I just need to know how it's stored, because I've heard that kids often find guns, if they're not stored in safes.
Yep. So at the beginning, you mentioned that you had a background in film and you've used that to create really compelling, incredible content, um, advocating for things like this, especially around gun safety. And so there's this lovely video that I want to play a little clip of because it's hilarious, number one, but it does a really good job of getting this message across. So let's just take a quick look at that.
Bye, Katie. Mommy loves you. Be good.
Bye, Mommy. We'll be good, we promise.
Okay. Oh, before I go, I should probably ask a few questions. I don't want to be that mom, but...
No problem. Come on in. Ask away.
Katie's allergic to soy.
Oh, totally get it. We're a soy-free house.
What about pets?
Cohabitating with creatures that eat their own poop?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thoughts on screen time?
Oh, do you mean brain-melting crack?
What about chokables? Katie's got an underdeveloped gag reflex.
All our toys are at least 3 inches in diameter.
That's right.
She makes me measure.
All organic food?
GMOs? OMG.
Sugar?
Don't say the S word in my house.
Dairy?
Do I look like a cow?
Loud music?
Only nature sounds.
Any dangerous corners or sharp edges?
Oh, no. We only have round furniture.
All my friends have rectangular beds, Mom. Wow, I thought my mom was extra.
Katie! This is grown-up talk, okay? Go play.
Go on.
Kids.
Kids.
Sun exposure?
Oh, the entire backyard is tented.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
So I'll just see you guys at 5.
Okay.
Don't worry, Mommy. We're okay. We just thought it was a toy.
Oh my God. You didn't tell me you had guns in the house?
Well, you didn't ask.
Before I go, I should probably ask a few questions.
Come on in. Ask away.
I keep reading about accidental shootings happening when kids find guns at home. Do you have any unsecured guns?
We do have a gun, but it's in the safe.
Is it loaded?
No, we keep the ammunition separately.
Great, thanks. So I'll see you guys at 5.
Mommy, look, we're playing cops and robbers.
Huh. Didn't think to ask about that. Does that have a key?
Now, that's a good question.
Okay, so I just find that so funny. And it's exactly what you were saying before. We ask about all these other things. Why do we find it so hard to ask about gun safety and where guns are kept? But how, this is such, gun safety and gun violence is such a difficult and hard topic. And you have managed to use humor to bring attention to it. And I'm curious about the role that humor plays in the advocacy that you do.
Sure. So I mentioned I had a background in film, and then I became an activist. And then I sort of thought, what if I combine the two, and started making short films about issues that I was passionate about. And I've always been drawn to comedy. I don't know. I don't know that I'm that funny myself, but I love comedy. I have a lot of comedy friends. Just comedy is definitely something that appeals to me. And I noticed that, there are videos out there, certainly on issues, right? There's a lot of content on issues, but so much of it is depressing because a lot of these issues are really sad. And I find that it just becomes noise. People tune it out of like, I don't want to watch that. That's going to make me sad. And so what I found was when you use humor, it cuts through. First of all, it kind of tricks people into paying attention, or you think you're watching. And the play date, the video you referenced, was a really good example where it's a video that starts out and you think you're just watching a funny video about two moms kind of chatting before a play date. And then you feel like, okay, I'm funny. This is funny. I'm having fun watching it. And then boom, it hits you with a message. And we find so people are more likely to watch something if it's funny. And B, humor is sticky. When we laugh, we remember. And so I found that the video that we made about the play date and asking about gun safety before a play date. I made that video a few years ago. It got a few million views, which was exciting at the time. But now, even years later, people come up to me all the time and say, I asked because of that video, because I remember that video and I asked before a play date. And I think it sticks because it's funny. We did another video. So I have a partner that I work with on all of my videos named Laura Everly. She's a brilliant, she's a mom too. She has two kids. We both have sons named Leo. She's a brilliant director. So we write together and then I produce and she directs. But we did another video last year. This was after the Dobbs decision and realizing how galvanizing abortion was as an issue. But abortion particularly is something that, usually is talked about in a really heavy way. And so we were trying to think like, can we make abortion funny? It sounds crazy, but we were like, how are we going to cut through? How can we make abortion funny?
Oh, hey, sweetie, how can I help you?
I read there are babies that totally need homes, so I'd love to adopt one.
That's adorable, but impossible. You're cute. How old are you, 11?
12 and a half.
Excuse me.
If science says I'm old enough to have a baby, hello, period in PE class, I should be able to adopt one, am I right?
No, you're wrong. You've got to provide food, shelter, mental, dental. Do you have proof of income?
Oh, does tooth fairy money count? Well, if I can't take a baby home, what about surrogacy? Wouldn't I look fly pregnant?
Oh my God, no, put that down. Pregnant teens are at high risk for preeclampsia, toxemia, emotional trauma.
Ugh, you're killing my vibe.
Don't be sassing me. Oh God, not again. We do not adopt children.
I was just wondering if you knew where the abortion clinic is?
Oh, I'm so sorry, but the state closed all of them.
Thanks.
So that video, we were really lucky. That video kind of went super viral. It's like all over TikTok, which meant we were reaching a lot of people who political ads don't normally reach. And I think people really appreciated the humor, and I think it really stuck with them. So that's often, I think, humor used appropriately and respectfully. Humor can be a way to cut through the noise and just really stick with people.
Yeah, I completely agree. I saw both of those videos independently of even knowing you, and I remember them. They were stuck in my mind because they went very viral, and they cut through. And the other thing about them, I think that's really powerful, is that they tap into the parental identity in a really powerful way, right? So you see yourself reflected, especially the Playdate one, where like, yeah, I've had that conversation about, screen time and,
Right.
what's allowed and what isn't. Why can't I have it about gun safety?
Right.
So going back to gun safety a little bit, I wanted you had shared about your experience trying to get your school to send these letters out. Can you tell me how that ended up and whether your school is doing that now?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Okay, so after being laughed at by the superintendent, he did agree to talk to the superintendent of Stockton that had already sent out letters to their community. And it was a good conversation. So he actually did agree to send out letters in Burbank. And now, basically, parents, you get all that paperwork before school starts. So now there's a whole single piece of paper that parents have to sign saying that they, understand that it is the law that they need to safely store any guns in their home. And then, so that went really well in Burbank. It got a very positive response. And then we heard that Los Angeles School District, which is the second biggest school district in America, they were considering sending home safe storage information. So I started a petition and I got 2,500 moms to sign it very easily, by the way. People were very excited to sign it. Delivered it at a school board meeting and the resolution passed. So now Los Angeles USD sends home safe storage information to every child in the district, every family in the district. And it was really cool because I started getting emails and calls from women in school districts across America saying, like, how do I get this done in my school district? And I would give them the information, and in most places it passed. So I don't know what the count is, but I would say now probably hundreds of school districts in America are sending home information about safe storage.
I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. If you'd like to connect with us further, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at ParentsTogether. That's incredible. That's game changing, you know? That can make such a difference. Okay, so this was your work with Moms Demand Action, but you also went on to start an organization called Momtivist.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that is, so basically, right, I was very involved with Moms Demand Action, but definitely was looking for more opportunities to speak out about issues I cared about, because there were many issues I was passionate about. I think at this point I had baby number 2, so I had 2 little kids at home. And it was actually a friend of mine. I have a brilliant friend named Dr. Elisa Angeloni, and she had started this group called Momtivist, like it was a Facebook group. And we became friends, and I was like, oh my God, let's build it together. And so we built it to be an in-person as well as online organization. And we ended up having like dozens of events. We call them progress play dates. They're basically progress play date. Parents bring their kids, you have it in someone's backyard. And an activity we found worked really well was postcarding for candidates, because we would have the kids color the postcards, or the older kids would draw little pictures on the postcards. And then on the back, we'd say, you know, please make sure to register to vote, or please vote for this candidate who supports, you know, gun safety. Or, so it's great because I think so many people feel like activism is over here and parenthood is over here. And I think they go together so beautifully. And I think part of that is creating spaces where parents can bring their kids and enter their kids into the conversation. You know, our kids knew why we were postcarding. They knew who we were postcarding for. You know, even a little kid can understand, you know, a lot of these issues. And as I said, the kids loved putting like pictures and stickers and all those things on the postcards. It works for letter writing as well. We definitely had other times where we were phone banking or text banking. And then often what we would do is have one adult would do like a little activity with the kids, often kind of related in some way to what we were doing. And then the rest of us would be free to phone bank and text bank.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was fun. It was really fun, and built this really beautiful sense of community.
I love that. And I love what you said about parenting and politics. Just like this thing that happened with Sandy Hook, which just shook parents to the core. And it felt so personal to so many parents. And the idea that parenting is political, and everything that we do as parents, which is all about taking care of our kids, making sure they're safe, we can do better if we have leaders who care about those things as well, right?
Yes. I mean, obviously, you know, again, there's so, I think every aspect of parenthood is political, whether it's thinking about, you know, what kind of education our kids get, or if we get paid leave so we can be with our baby and bond with our baby after the baby's born. I mean, gosh, climate change. I mean, talk about, you know, that's our kids' future. That's our grandkids. So I think reproductive rights. I mean, I have two kids with wombs, 2 kids with uteruses, and I really want to make sure that they have the right, you know, to do what they want with their own bodies. So I think everything is definitely political, and in a way that, again, I think kids, at least my kids, they're curious, like they're interested, and I think they can make up their mind. I say to them, like, you can always disagree, but here's what I'm fighting for, and here's why I'm fighting, and what do you think about that? And making it a conversation, I think from very early on, I think is really powerful.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so tell me about your kids. How many kids do you have?
I have three. So my little one, Anna, is 6. And it's really funny because when we started Momtivist, she was a baby, and I would wear her in a sling. And I remember, and I was still doing Be Smart presentations. I remember actually after the Marjorie Stone Douglas shooting, after Parkland, we had a Moms Demand Action meeting, and usually like 20 people would show up. That day, 400 people showed up, and I was doing a Be Smart presentation. I had the baby in the sling, so I have 400 people who like now come up to me and they're like, "I remember you there with the baby." So anyway, baby Anna came to the Women's March in utero the first time, and then in a sling the second time. Anna is 6, and Leo is 8, and my oldest Hale is 12.
And how has your role as an activist shifted as your kids have gotten older, or has it at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely shifted. Well, it certainly shifted in that, as I said, kind of more and more conversations with them about what they're interested in and what they care about. I will say my oldest Hale is gender fluid, and I have always been passionate about LGBTQ plus rights. Like, that's always been near and dear to my heart. But definitely having a child who, Hale was assigned female at birth, is currently using male pronouns, and it makes me that much more passionate about fighting for, trans kids, non-binary kids, gender fluid kids. And Hale, of course, is in the fight, right with me, which is really beautiful. It's really beautiful that we can share that. But, I have, my son Leo is 8 years old, and he's posted, he's marched with me, in women's rights marches. And I think, like, there's so many issues that kids can understand, even if it's not something that they necessarily personally experience. But I definitely, yes. So I think as we get older, as the kids get older, it's a little more maybe following their lead and finding what they're interested in. But they've definitely grown up. They kind of joke, they're like, another march, but it was easier to take them to marches when they were in the stroller. I could wear them. Sometimes the 8-year-old is like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I have the same experience. I have so many cute pictures of my kids going to marches when they were little with holding signs. And now that's not a thing that they're super interested in doing. And at the same time, we have these really incredible conversations about just what they're dealing with and how it intersects with politics. Because again, there's so much intersection between parenting and the world in which we live, which is controlled by politics and influenced by politics. So I love that you're helping bridge those two worlds in really seamless ways.
Yeah, thanks. And I think what's nice, what I'm very grateful for, is when tragic events happen, we always talk about, like, well, and that's why we fight, and that's why we're working to change it. And I do think about, if a school shooting happened and you didn't feel plugged into how to fight against them happening again, I think that feeling of helplessness would be really hard as a parent, and I think that would be hard on a child, right? But in our house, at least, when, a school shooting happens, or, recently there was this absolutely tragic death of this non-binary child, Nex, and I tear up even thinking about it. It was really hard to talk to my kids about that. But what we could talk about was, and that's why we fight, and that's why we progress. Here's the progress we've made in a lot of places, and here's the progress we still have to make, to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Right. I think with my own kids and from working and listening to parents, I hear so often that kids are feeling so much anxiety and so much fear and worry. On gun safety, for example, these kids have to do active shooter drills at school all the time, from the time they're teeny tiny. And so being able to talk to them about what we're doing to make that better, to fight back against gun violence, I think is a really powerful way to help them cope with that anxiety and that fear.
Absolutely. Mr. Rogers said, when tragedies happen and you're talking to kids about it, look for the helpers, which I agree, but I also think, like, we can be the helpers. Like, we should be the helpers, and that's really empowering to them.
Yeah, I love that. Exactly. Okay, so you have done so many incredible things related to advocacy, and now you're the co-founder of a group called Democrashe. So can you tell me a little bit about that group?
Yeah, sure. So, Democracy was originally founded by a brilliant woman named Sarah Jekyll. So you may notice a theme in my life. Brilliant, brilliant women having brilliant ideas, and then I'm so lucky to connect with them and help them build these ideas into reality. So
I love that we're recording this on International Women's Day. It's like, yes, amazing women doing amazing things.
women, that's the entire message. This actually could not be a better day to talk about democracy. So Sarah Jekyll had been someone I knew in activist circles. She was an amazing, amazing outreach director for an organization that did voter registration. So thanks to Sarah, thousands and thousands of voters were registered. Anyway, so Sarah, she also was a social worker. And so Sarah had noticed, she had been working with a lot of female candidates and had noticed that, these women were so passionate about running, but they didn't necessarily have the resilient skills that you need to weather the storm that especially hits as a woman candidate, and especially, frankly, as an intersectional woman candidate. We all know, it's really interesting that, as you may know, we are way behind in terms of women represented in elected office. It's like 30% of Congress is, female, even though obviously we're more than 50% of the population. 8% are women of color, even though that's over 20% of the population. And what Sarah realized was it's actually not that women get elected at a lower rate than men. Women win at the same rate as men, and sometimes even more. Women aren't running. So it was really about why aren't women running? And why are women falling out of the pipeline? Because when they're hit by all of these challenges that face women, and especially intersectional women, they're not armed with the resilient skills that would help them. So Sarah realized that the last time men and women equally, or males and females equally, believe that they can be president or be, elected is in high school. So she decided to create a program for high school female identifying students to empower them to become leaders and future elected officials. So she pitched me this idea. I was like, this is the best idea I've ever heard. It hits all the things, like my whole life. What have I been passionate about? Uplifting women, fighting for what you believe in, politics, education, and storytelling. And so much of democracy is really about helping young women value their voices, helping them tell their stories, helping them value their lived experience and bring it to the table, and then giving them the skills, the resilience they need so that when they're facing internal barriers as well as external barriers, they can face them and move on. So anyway, Democracy started actually during COVID. We started it together. We built this amazing leadership team of high school girls to help us build a curriculum and to lead workshops. And now we've served over 300 girls. We're growing and growing. And it's a program where, girls get together and, as I say, learn, kind of classic leadership skills like public speaking and persuasion and advocacy, and also learn these really beautiful resilient skills like grounding and developing an inner best friend, and gratitude. And anyway, so it's been a really beautiful thing to build with Sarah. And as I said, we're trying to grow and grow so we can serve. There's 8 million high school girls in America, and we want to serve every single one and let her know, that her voice matters.
That's amazing. That's just so inspiring, and it gives me so much hope for the future.
Oh,
right?
You want a jolt of hope? Sit in the room with these girls. I have to tell you, there are days when I'm feeling low. There are days where I'm not sure, what the future holds for our country. And then we get on a workshop with these girls, and they're from all across America. 15, 16-year-old girls speaking so passionately about laws they would pass to, help disadvantaged communities, or, what they would do to help save our planet, or, how we can, they can teach their community. These girls are already starting nonprofits. We have a number of our girls who age 16, are already starting their own nonprofits to help their communities. So it's so hopeful and inspiring and beautiful.
I love that. Okay. So we're wrapping up, but this was so inspiring to hear about these girls and how much hope they give you for the future. But I wanted to ask you, you've been doing this work for years, advocating on behalf of parents and families and kids. What is your vision for what's possible for our families and kids in our country?
I mean, as I said, I feel like I've seen what can happen. I have seen, I picture these progress play dates, and it's just like it's just families together fighting for what they believe in, and like just sharing in this beautiful community. And I think that can be possible, nationwide. I think anybody can start their own Momtivist chapter. You don't even have to call it Momtivist, but like anybody who wants to get a group of friends together, get your kids together, and just think like, what do we want to fight for? And there's easy ways you can do it. Again, even things like postcarding are so easy, but it's so empowering. And then maybe from that you go toward your calling and your marching. And so that is something I really believe, think of it as like a book club, but instead of it's issues, right? And you're working on those things together in this beautiful community. So that's something I definitely hope there's more of in the future. And then, as I said, seeing these teenage girls in Democrashe, like when young women run for office and win, we see amazing things. We have seen that at, the local level, the state level, national level. We have seen when parents lead, what incredible, incredible things can be done.
Absolutely. And those progress groups sound so fun, so you can have fun, you can come together, you can fight for what's right. And it doesn't have to feel like a chore or completely separate from your regular life. I think there are so many ways to integrate it
We're like, we got snacks, we got snacks, we got toys, and we got politics. Like yes, I think you're so right. Like making it fun and making it something that doesn't feel medicinal, but actually feels like a party,
Yeah, exactly. It's going back to what we were talking about earlier about humor and about sort of like making that connection in a way that is disarming. And so I think you have done an incredible job of filling that niche of disarming folks with incredible advocacy and inspiring them to make change. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was an absolute joy. Thank you so much. If you want to learn more about Democrashe, you can just go to www.democrashe, all one word, democrashe.org. And you can learn more about Democrashe. And if you know female identifying high school students who might want to apply, or if you are one yourself, we'd love to have you. And we're also launching an incredible online curriculum that's free to anybody who's interested. I even think adult women would benefit from it. It's so empowering. It's so inspiring. And again, there will be a link to that at www.democrashe.org.
Okay, so that's www.democrashe.org.
And finally, if you would like to join Momtivist, we do have a national Facebook group. So just on Facebook, it's Momtivist, request to add, and I will add you. And definitely, if you would like to learn more about Democrashe or Momtivist, you can message me on Instagram and I'll give you any info you need.
Next time on Power to the Parents, I talk with climate activist and mom Winona Bateman, who is the founder and executive director of Families for a Livable Climate in Montana. Winona works to encourage families in Montana and beyond to strengthen the climate movement and support a thriving future for all families. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode.